College of William and Mary. I have the privilege of sharing with you today the StormSense project, which is an iteratively predictive tool in development for emergency managers to continually visualize flooding from storm surge, rain, and tides, specifically up to 36 hours in advance of the flood events. Now, I've developed a website called StormSense.com, spelled just like that up there, for the most part. That'll kind of provide you some of the many assets or specific aspects of this project that ultimately I hope to address that I may not be able to fully elucidate in the remaining 4 minutes and 30 seconds of this presentation. So, developed this website, and ultimately it incorporates all of the community partners, and there's a legion of them involved here, including the City of Newport News, Hampton, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Williamsburg, and York County, highlighted here in this map of Hampton roads. Now we'll begin with some of the smaller contingent populations first, focusing primarily on high population density regions first, and then we'll expand the modeling approach to cover a larger area and beyond across the U.S. Eastern Seaboard moving forward. Now ultimately, just some background information. The Hampton Roads region is essentially the largest population center in the United States at risk from sea level rise after, specifically in New Orleans. But also, it's got more than 400,000 properties representing this area of 1.7 million people potentially affected by flooding. And ultimately, this results in existing flood communication and messaging systems as being technically insufficient at this point in terms of trying to represent and meet the needs of the diverse at-risk communications audiences. And this is truly an area where IoT-enabled devices, and specifically providing information using predictive models, can really help in a very highly replicable method. So in terms of taking this information, essentially the StormSense model, really what is it? In this case, the heart of the StormSense model is a subgrid hydrodynamic model. And essentially this is enhanced with LiDAR-derived topography at 5-meter resolution or better that can be, for example, set to update in 1-hour intervals, that can be set to highlight changes between previous forecasts, both in terms of feet, but also in percent change to inform emergency managers, communities, and individual users, specifically whether or not the predicted flooding will be less or more severe than previous forecasts. Now, ultimately, the goal is to establish a series of stream gauges in a variety of areas that are a little bit more densely populated than the sparse network currently maintained by the USGS NOAA and the Virginia Institute of Marine Science in the lower Chesapeake Bay. Ultimately, you can use this information not only to help validate the model's predictions at high resolution, but you can also take these information and potentially assimilate them as model inputs in the future. So ultimately, you can view this in terms of the context of storm surge, but also tidal flooding and precipitation-based flooding, and oftentimes a combination of these three will be in effect. So ultimately, as we move forward, we have a prototype that we developed in fall of 2015 for the City of Norfolk. And specifically, just to show some of these examples here from a citizen science effort, these tiny little red dots along the edge of these periphery street sections can actually see and detect visually, specifically, how accurate the model is in terms of spatial resolution. So just to give you another example of what that looks like in another area of Norfolk along Llewellyn Street, in this example here, you can see a roadway that is flooded. That we provided these forecasts 36 hours in advance to show people this is where our model predicts flooding. Could you please help us find a way to validate whether our model is actually accurate? Is it really flooding in these places? In fact, yes it is. If we were able to provide this information to emergency managers in advance, then they could have actually closed these roadways and kept these individual vehicles from getting flooded. Now, of course, there's an expansion plan moving forward, ultimately beyond Hampton Roads, the U.S. East and Gulf Coast, and beyond to the rest of the world. But primarily in the first phase through 2016, 2017, the focus is mainly on Newport News, Hampton, Norfolk, and Virginia Beach. Now I'm running out of time here, so I'll mainly focus towards the bottom. It's usually the implementation of some form of water level sensors with IoT-enabled capabilities that not only allows us to provide this information to many different end users, not just emergency managers, but also we can take that and calibrate the model with those new sensors, which we'll be able to use as KPIs in the June 2017 Expo. So ultimately, the future goals are to improve prediction of flood depth and extents by 10% with the establishment and assimilation of water level gauge data into the flood modeling network to both enhance the vertical and horizontal accuracy of the model using scientifically established thresholds for ultimately being able to characterize these KPIs successfully. Thank you very much for your time.